It's so easy, isn't it, to get distracted by the algorithm. I was looking at a Mahyar tousi video and suddenly up popped Katie Hopkins. I'm always confused when I see Katie Hopkins with Eurovision, but she isn't a Eurovision singer. She is a person with very strange bedfellows in Tommy Robinson and Alex Belfield, and one should never forget those links. And in fact, Mahyar tousi didn't host her video. That was she did it all on her own. But for some bizarre reason, my phone seemed to think that it was right to change from one thing to another, because some people who watch Mahyar tousi would watch Katie Hopkins. Extraordinary. I will watch anything, frankly, but I don't intend to switch off my mind while I'm watching. Anyway, Mahyar tousi has put up a video about Marine Le Pen. It really is him doing this one this time. And Marine Le Pen is always interesting. Again, I don't approve of what she says. I don't like her. But she is always interesting, and she certainly comes across as quite statesman-like, though she should do something about her frown. Mahyar tousi says that she comes across with decisiveness and leadership, and she addresses the issue of mass migration, and at a time when multiculturalism, he says, has failed. In her speech, she talks about an endemic problem, about brutality, about no reason can legitimize the attacks that we've seen across France. She's quite right about that. No reason can legitimize it. And although people may be angry, it's not this shouldn't be an excuse to go and torch a car, to attack a school, to attack people in government. No, nothing justifies that. Yes, indeed, we debate with these people, but we don't set fire to them or set fire to their things. And even I think the whole idea of marching through the streets, when we have social media, we really don't need this marching through the streets and stopping the traffic. It's absurd, utterly absurd. The only reason to march is to draw attention to the issues. We can draw attention to the issues on social media without inconveniencing people who are traveling, without disrupting schools, and so on. We can draw attention. We have greater tools for getting our voice heard today than we have ever had in history. And she goes on and she says that she excoriates those who try to exonerate the people involved in this violence. She says they are wrong. They are wrong. But I think it's perfectly understandable why they are angry. That's not to exonerate the violence. That's to understand where it comes from. And I think part of the problem was the president's failure to be presidential, the president's failure to immediately respond and to talk to the family of the people of Nahel, who was killed by the police. The first thing he should have done was to reach out and talk, and he doesn't seem to have done that. And that is absurd. You can't wait. You have to reach out immediately. If he'd reached out immediately, maybe none of this violence would have happened, or it would have happened in a different way. She links immigration to the problem. I think she's wrong. And she talks about entering a period of uncertainty, children dragged into destruction, and she calls for the imposition of a state of emergency. I think, actually, she's a bit late. I think this anger is on the point of fizzling out now, and it's now a state of clearing up. Mahyar tousi says that she's a leader in waiting. I'm afraid I think he's right, but Mahyar Tousi is often right. It doesn't mean he's somebody to necessarily agree with, but I think he's right. I think she is a leader in waiting. I think she is on the cusp of taking control, and we should be cautious. He talks about a nationalist conservative and a wave of nationalist conservatism spreading across Europe. He says he's wondering why Britain has missed that. Well, that is because Britain has had a conservative government for the last 13 years, and it has degenerated into chaos, partly because of the absurdity of Brexit. And the alternative to a conservative government in Britain is a socialist government, and we are heading towards that with certainty, I think. There is no question that this government will fail. In Britain, it's not at our elections. A party doesn't win an election. A party loses an election, and this government has made it quite clear that the next election is one it is going to lose, as indeed John Major recognised and talked to Chris Patten about the loss of the 1997 election, which they felt was inevitable in 1992. They felt that was inevitable in 1992. When they achieved the sudden and surprising election victory, they knew that was their last. I don't think the election of 2019 was followed by such a conversation. I think Boris was buoyed into thinking that he was invincible. And COVID and Ukraine tested him, and he lacked the leadership skills to make use of that extraordinary election victory that he had secured. He personally squandered the victory. And he will go down in history not as the person who got Brexit done, but as the person who probably destroyed the Conservative Party, and who certainly gave Labour their election victory in the next year, maybe 18 months. There is no question about that. And everything else is a matter of waiting. I think a Marine Le Pen presidency in France would be worrying. What we have seen across Europe and across Britain is a wave of xenophobia, and that needs to be addressed. And I think Marine Le Pen's approach, I think Katie Hopkins' approach is the wrong one. I think the only approach to xenophobia is to recognise that it is morally repugnant, and then to deal with it. And we have a deep-seated in our culture is a history of kindness to strangers, to those strangers among us. And the language that we hear on a daily basis from Parliament tells us those strangers are not welcome, and that must be wrong. Those strangers, the people who have made their homes here, are part of our society and are contributing greatly to our society. We need to recognise that, we need to embrace it, and this rearguard action of nasty xenophobia needs to be smothered.